Welcome to Wisconsin. Just kidding.
Just kidding.
Welcome to Old Fashioned Finance, the podcast that mixes cocktails and high finance. I'm your host, Caleb Frankert, and I'm joined by my good friend and fellow money muddler, Jason Burnell.
Caleb, can a podcast about finance be entertaining?
Not without alcohol.
All right, let's mix it up. Woo!
I said welcome to Wisconsin
I know you did.
because we're drinking Old Fashions the Wisconsin way today.
All I can think of is, hi, I'm in Delaware.
Oh, no. I think Wisconsin sounds fun. They love cheese.
And
They're very passionate
other
about
things.
Brandy.
They are.
Football.
Yeah, football, yeah.
Cold weather.
Fishing.
The
The
We're
lake.
going to lose any Wisconsin listeners that we have probably.
We don't know
but,
anything about Wisconsin.
I was going to say, like, talking like Canadians.
yeah,
You know?
I guess. Man, this is a big drink.
Okay, well, it's a Wisconsin-sized drink.
That's funny.
What we're drinking today are Brandy Old Fashions,
Oh,
Jason.
nice.
So this is
club soda. I can see it in there.
Old
Bubbly.
Fashioned Finance.
Yeah.
So we've done a few Old Fashions.
Yeah.
I don't know
excited about
how
this.
we've talked about
Yeah.
this, but we've never done a legit Brandy Old Fashioned.
I mean, it's the throes of winter, and the brandy really warms you up.
It's the month of despair, man. It's February. It's there's not a lot to look forward to.
What do you have to look forward to in February? Well, there's
Valentine's Day,
February.
my wife's birthday. We have a lot of
Yeah.
birthdays in our family actually in February.
Okay, that makes sense.
So we usually get together for
my
a
daughter
couple
just had a
birthdays.
birthday. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's fun stuff in February, but it is a long, short month.
Mhm.
That's for sure. So,
Yeah.
but I'm
we go.
guessing this is how folks in Wisconsin get by drinking these Brandy Old Fashions. And, going back to the early days of the podcast when we dug into history a little bit more,
Yep.
there is a contingent out there who is adamant that
This is the old fashioned.
that the Brandy Old Fashioned was the original.
Wow.
And
I don't know how I feel about that.
I like the controversy.
You know
it's
what?
Fun.
If they're the Wisconsin folks that think a brandy old fashioned is the old fashioned,
Fight me.
they can just join Canada.
I don't know. I love Canadians.
Yeah.
Very nice people.
Their whiskey's
Everyone
terrible.
Now, they do have some good rye whiskeys. I will say that. But anyway.
I don't know. I'm always afraid. I might as well just have the American stuff if I
Yeah.
can get there. So, all right.
Well, okay. What we're
do we
drinking
got in here?
today
There's
is
a lot.
It is. It's a stout drink, isn't it? And you notice there's some more colors in there at the bottom that you don't see in the typical old
Oh,
fashions
there's
that
like
we make.
multiple fruits in here, huh?
Yeah, this is not. So if you remember way at the beginning of the podcast, we did the 6 essential cocktails, and they were prohibition style. They were boozy.
Yeah.
The additives were very minute. So less ingredients. Kind of the less
So
is
this
more.
is not the.
This is not. So this might be the original old fashioned, but it's a little bit more involved. So what we've got here today. And I'm going to go from a recipe that I found on liquor.com, which is a pretty credible source for,
Sure.
bona fide cocktail recipes.
And none of these ingredients are crazy.
No. You probably have most of this stuff at home. There's a big difference in that they use brandy.
Yep.
But I'll go down the list as they listed off. There's 3 dashes of Angostura bitters.
Yes.
Which, yes, that is an improvement over most old-fashioned recipes.
Well,
You'll
and
see 2 or 1.
I mean, we cheat.
We do. I
It's
see
like
2
1,
and I
2,
do 3.
3.
Yeah. I love
10.
Angostura bitters. I love them. So we got started on the right foot here with 3 dashes of Angostura bitters. Here's where we start to get where we start to muddle it up, folks. 2 orange slices. You're gonna cut 2 orange slices.
Okay.
Because hold on to that thought, I guess. 2 orange slices. 2 brandied cherries, so Luxardo cherries.
All right, I'm good with that.
1 sugar cube. I know that you like to do it the old-fashioned way rather than using simple syrup.
Really like sugar cubes.
2 ounces of brandy. Okay.
As
and then-
expected.
Yeah, right. And then 7-Up, Sprite, or Club Soda. I use Club Soda because I like 7-Up, I like Sprite, but I want to taste the
That's
drink.
just more sweet,
Yeah.
basically.
I don't need more sweet. Brandy's already pretty sweet.
Yeah. And a sugar cube is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you think about it, my wife, just a regular old-fashioned the way that I make it, she thinks they're too sweet anyway. And I don't have a sweet tooth when it comes to these drinks. So, and then we have also a brandied cherry and an orange slice for the garnish. So that's why we have 2 of each of those.
I see. So there's one in there.
Yes. So what you're going to start out with is
I see.
throw your bitters an orange slice, okay, a cherry, and a sugar cube in the bottom of that glass, and just muddle it up. Go to town.
I can see that there's some floaters in here.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. There's sediment in there for sure. So you muddle that all up, and then you're going to fill the glass up to the top with ice cubes. Pour your brandy in.
Got it.
And then your club soda you're going to use to kind of top
it.
So just, not all the way to the top, but...
So did you stir this?
I did.
Yeah, you'd have to with that.
You definitely have to. But there's going to be some sediment and some pulp in there.
That's all right.
But if you look at our orange slice, if you're watching the video, that's muddled up in there in the bottom. So this is going to have some different flavors for sure. So I've got brandy in yours.
Okay.
I mean, cognac in yours.
Ooh.
I've got just brandy in mine.
Okay.
Because we ran out of cognac because somebody got carried away with Tom and Jerry's. Not gonna
I know who that is.
All right, so let's try the old Wisconsin way of drinking a brandy old fashioned.
This is a big drink.
Cheers.
Oh my goodness, that's real good.
It is really good.
You know what'd make that better?
Whiskey?
Bourbon.
It is a little softer.
It's soft.
It's not as hard. I mean, I don't want to say harsh, but it's not as bitey.
No, it is a lighter, less liquor-y drink. Most of it is. I mean, there's only 2 ounces, really.
Yeah.
So
I'll say that the club soda in there
like
kind of gives a little bit of that prickly.
Sure.
Like if you were to make
Tickle
a
your
rye
nose.
old fashioned, which I really like a rye old fashioned, you get that prickly, kind of tingly, bitey burn a little bit with rye. I'll say without the club soda in here, I think it might be a little boring.
yeah,
I
agree.
Homogenous,
Which is
that
why
the
they
right
have
word?
all the other things in there, the cherry and the orange.
You know what? That's not bad.
I like it. I actually
like
really like
brandy.
it a lot. So
I'm not going to argue. I mean, I like brandy cocktails. I think that's pretty good. That's not what if you handed this to me.
no, I would not have expected that.
No, if someone poured this for me in a red Solo cup or something, right? And they're like, "Here, what are you drinking?" I wouldn't say old fashioned.
You know what?
It does taste very different.
I just started to feel that little bit of brandy hug going on.
Yeah, little warmth
I love
in
that.
the neck and chest
I
area.
love that part.
Yeah, that's the
it's
other
not
thing.
orangey at all. Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, you can taste it, but it's.
I think
don't know.
I smell it from the garnish more than anything.
Sure. Wow. Good.
All right,
it out.
hey,
I think you should try
congratulations,
it out.
Wisconsin.
You did something
I'm for
right.
it. That's good. I'm not going to go as far as to say that this is my old-fashioned. In fact,
No.
we're going to have an event here next week where we're mixing up old-fashions for folks, and I'm not using this recipe.
No way.
But it's kind of labor-intensive compared to the other way that we make it.
Yeah, I mean, throw a sugar cube in a shaker. That's kind of my mode, so.
Yeah, I'm still going to – I know you do the shaker. I can't get behind shaking – the old-fashioned.
I know. It's all right.
Well, agree to disagree.
Some people are right.
That's the great thing. That's a great thing about. We said this about whiskey to somebody the other day. That's the great thing about cocktails. It's okay to be wrong.
That's right.
All right, Jason. Well, let's move on to our finance topic. Today, episode 96. Wow. We've been talking all month about retirement plans and the order of savings for retirement and all that good kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the what's the word I'm looking for?
Logistics.
That's a great word. Yeah, the logistics behind all of it. So we cannot lose sight of the goal.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, I think early in the year, a lot of folks are thinking, like, New Year's resolutions. I can keep these things, make some adjustments.
And we've followed that line of thinking all the way up to this episode, so I think it still falls in line.
Sure
Not
does.
saying that everybody listening that made these resolutions and have been following along are going to get to retire this year. But I think, like anything, when it comes to goal setting and things like that, you have to remember the why.
Right. And I think there's definitely a whole handful of listeners that are probably, like, very goal focused or competitive. And I think this gives you some real fuel to kind of think about here. So yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about ways to retire creatively.
Yeah. Retire creatively.
I mean,
that's the name of the episode.
That are legal.
Yeah. Well, you could be really creative.
I mean, going to a penitentiary is also a retirement plan.
That's true. 3 square meals a day. We just watched Office Space in here.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? Yeah.
White collar prison is no picnic. Okay? All right, Jason. So I'm going to let you take the lead here a little bit. When we're talking about retiring creatively, what the heck do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think there's some misnomers about like there's only one way to retire. And I think growing up in kind of a blue collar community, we have a large General Motors plant here.
Yes. Getting larger, I think, from the news that I heard.
Yeah, Johns Manville, which is like an insulation producer.
By the way, if you don't know how they make fiberglass insulation, it's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Go to YouTube and watch a video, and you'd be amazed at how marbles
in Defiance,
involved.
Ohio. Yeah. So, but
marbles.
But the misnomer is that you would just work 35 years in whatever career that you pick.
Yep.
And that's it. And then you one day decide, I don't want to do this anymore, and you quit.
Hopefully you have some pension and some Social Security.
Yep. Maybe some 401k dollars sitting there.
Yep.
So that's a misnomer. There's lots of ways to retire. And you don't necessarily have to do the same job forever, right? Yeah. So I think that's a good point to focus on here. That's the perspective we're taking. We're going to look at some alternative ways to retire that are legal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is going to be a less technical episode, right,
Correct.
Jason? It's going to be less about, like you said, the logistics and the do this, then that, if this, then that, if X, then Y, all that kind of stuff that we've been kind of heavy on in the past couple of weeks.
Yep.
But yeah, it is going to be more of a I think the word that keeps popping out in my head is why, not forgetting the why of what you're doing and keeping that in focus.
Exactly. And I think as you go through kind of that plan and you're making a good roadmap for what you want to do, you better be very clear on like, if I'm going to retire at 50, okay, then what?
10 years, huh?
Oh, man.
Shut up, man.
That just kind of hit me like a sledgehammer.
Kind of hit you like a Brandy old-fashioned.
How come I have immediate chest pain?
All right, so
the
let's
sad
say
part is I've looked 50 for the last 15 years.
Oh, man. The other day, I met somebody that was in his mid-40s, and we were talking. As you know, I love guitars.
Yeah,
I was buying a guitar from him.
Sure.
We were talking about some of these guitars and some of the history, and I said, well, I can remember them putting this here and blah, blah, and he goes, yeah, well, I mean, you're a little bit older than me, and I'm like, well, hold on.
Come on.
I was like, how old are you? He's like, I'm 43. I'm like, well, I'm 37. And he went, oh, I'm sorry, man.
That's unfortunate.
I was like, it's okay. It must be my line of work.
So, again, I think, what's the point? Okay, so you better know. So I actually...
And the point, by the way, not to let people off the hook, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
The point is not just to retire, because we hear that all the time. Well, exactly. I want to retire. Yeah, but why and to what?
Yeah, and so what's the purpose?
Yes.
Okay, so whether it's like charitable work, clients that are fostering children, grandkids, starting a business, doing something you've always wanted to do that you thought was the best thing to do.
Yeah, it could be starting a new endeavor altogether.
Right.
Yep.
So I'm going to have to give credit to one of my clients, but I can't. But one of my clients came up with a great word.
Why can't you?
Because I can't say their names. So,
no, you can give them credit, though. You know who you are.
You know who you are, and you listen. They replaced the word retire with rewire.
I've heard this.
This is amazing.
Rewire.
Yeah, so they called it rewirement, and I love that.
That's great.
And so I hate the word retirement. Okay?
Yeah.
So in my mind, retirement, ever since I've been in this line of work, was you die.
Well, I'll as you know, I was out of the office last week for a funeral.
Yeah.
And had a really this was a funeral at our church.
Get your feels going, right?
Well, we had a good conversation, me and another gentleman that he's an old school kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's I don't want to say stoic because that can have some negative connotations too, but he's a pretty reserved guy.
Mm-hmm.
When he talks, you listen because he doesn't like us.
Yeah.
Like us, we just talk.
Yeah.
When he talks, he has something to say, so you better listen up.
Interesting.
Right?
Calvin Coolidge style.
Yeah. So we were talking, and we have similar backgrounds. He owns a farm. I don't even know how old he is actually, because I'm afraid to ask. But anyway, so we have.
He's got a lot of wisdom, is what you're trying to say.
He does have a lot of wisdom.
Got it.
But we were talking about work in general. Sometimes that's the conversation starter. How's work going? All that kind of stuff. But we got into deeper things, and he knows that I'm in the retirement business. And he said, Caleb, I just maybe I'm weird, but I've never bought into the whole retirement scheme. And I said, you're right. And I struggle with this all the time because I am in the retirement business.
Right.
However, and I think the whole point is the idea of just being idle at a certain stage it's a foreign concept. And I'll say in the context of our conversation, being in a church, he said, I don't see where it's a biblical concept. And I said, that's really interesting. I would agree. I think there was an episode that we did about Social Security. Retirement, quote unquote, is a relatively new concept.
Sure is, yeah.
Starting in Germany and then really here in the United States taking shape in the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of one of those ideas that you were going to live 60 years.
Right.
And the working conditions that you lived through
absolutely
just took so much out of you that you became used up at that point.
You were deteriorated at 60 years old.
And so you maybe had a year or two left where the government felt an obligation to support you, which makes sense. But now it's turned into this idea that, oh, well, I can't wait to retire and be idle for 30 years.
Which, again,
it's a foreign concept.
Yeah, and those stats on that from that perspective are not strong. So I encourage you, when you're thinking about your plan.
Nay, I implore you.
It's critical that you think of what am I going to be doing and what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
How is it going to fulfill me as a person? And also don't become like real selfish about what that looks like. Okay, just because you're doing what you want every day doesn't mean you don't have ways to pass your wisdom on to other generations, and it's desperately needed.
Yeah.
So maybe stop the complaining about the next generation and maybe influence them a little bit. So
yeah.
So one of the first things I think in terms of the alternative ways to retire early, creatively, that are
and you
legal.
Said retire. Let's replace that with rewire.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Okay. Rewire yourself here a little bit is just to save more. Okay. So there is a movement out there called the FIRE movement.
So you're essentially saying how to get to rewirement faster.
Yeah. So if we save, let's say you're able to be so scrimpy on your income, save every dime, live on way less than 50%. I mean, some of these guys are saying like 20-25% of their income.
Yeah, like going back to the percentages, the 15% rule, the weird, like we're way beyond weird territory.
We're
here,
talking
right?
like saving 60-70% of your income. Okay, so you're able to FIRE is financially independent, retire early.
Yep.
Okay, and I think that that's a really interesting concept, one that is so different than what the blue collar, teachings that we've observed. But then again, I think most of these folks are saying, I don't want to be, a nuclear physicist my entire career. I'll do it for 15 years and then I'll be done. And then I'm going to go do ...
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's, start a distillery.
Ooh.
Build houses in the third world. There's just so many things that you can do. I think this is a very interesting concept, but not my favorite.
Yeah, it's when you say not your favorite, I'll ask you why in a second, but I'm going to say it's probably because that is not a super sustainable lifestyle in most people's opinions, I would guess.
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I draw the parallel between, and we love a lot of the Dave Ramsey stuff. When you talk about the debt repayment and all that kind of stuff, how you get, what does he call it? Gazelle intense.
Gazelle intense.
That's
a similar concept.
Yeah, it's all really, really good on paper, but the problem is, for the long haul, we're not wired to live that way for the long haul, right? It's just, in my opinion, not a super. And to add to that whole FIRE movement, I've heard maybe this is like an offshoot of the FIRE folks, but maybe the intention is to work hard for 10 years, pile up a bunch of money, and then you take your 30s off, or you take 5 years off, and you really, really dig into your passions.
Okay, so that...
with the plan of going back to something else, though.
That is my next one.
Okay.
Which is, I'm going to call this the sabbatical rewirement.
All right.
Okay. Ooh, that sounds like a book.
Ooh.
Yeah. So this is a mini retirement.
Need a ghostwriter?
Yeah. So you do the sabbatical. Sabbatical being typically 1 year or longer kind of thinking.
Okay.
I know there's lots of definitions of that.
Sure.
So,
technically we take a sabbatical every week.
Not a 2-day sabbatical. Yeah. So, this is a much longer period of time. Work for, let's say, 5 years, maybe take 5 years off. Work for 5 more years. This is becoming really popular.
So during your surges almost in employment, you're gazelle intense.
Absolutely.
You're piling up money. You're living crazy.
Conservative.
Yeah.
Yep. So like, again, same as the FIRE concept, saving 50, maybe 60% of your income.
So this
foregoing
is like
vacations, all of that.
This is like mini careers with mini retirements.
Yep, mini careers, mini retirements, and I think I like this one better.
It's interesting.
The job market has changed.
You gonna let me take 5 years off?
We'll talk about that later.
Right.
Don't make me cry on the podcast, man. No, but this idea being where you just really put your head down for a period of time, take a break. And I think here the purpose gets kind of built in. The one that is common is like, we're going to have kids for a period of, they're going to be young and they're going to be home for 5, 6, 8 years.
And maybe you want to homeschool. You want to be present. You want to coach all of their teams. And
Yep. I want to be able to get in the old Class A RV and travel around the country, not have responsibilities, but teach my kids what I know. That's really interesting.
It is.
I think this one has a little bit more staying power, because I think your periods of working could get longer as you get older, which is really interesting to me.
Well, I would say that this would be really dependent on the career that you're in, too.
Absolutely.
Are we talking about different careers, or are we talking about specializing in the same field? And
so obviously, if you are in a high demand job, career path, quitting and finding another job will be much simpler.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But
might be harder with 5-year gaps on your resume. Looks here like you worked 5 years and then you took 5 off.
I'm going to tell you, though, that hiring managers have got to shape up to this stuff. Yeah. Okay. Where
the workforce is different, for sure.
And it's not. The problem with a lot of the generational stuff is people just view this as wrong. Well, what's wrong with raising your kids for 5 or 6 years?
That's something you're never going to regret. As long as you don't go broke, right?
Well, that would be bad.
So
don't make your kids live in a homeless shelter, okay? It's just one of those things. You don't want to do that so you can not work for a
Jason,
period of 5 years.
This is interesting for so many reasons, because we did not, like we do with a lot of these episodes, sometimes you and I prepare separately, and then we like to bring each other in fresh and have a real genuine conversation. We kind of did that again here today. And I'm looking at this from some different angles. So if you're doing this mini sabbatical FIRE type of a program, I guess, there's not a lot of benefit for someone in their 20s to be socking money away into retirement plans.
No, actually, this would be anti-retirement plan conversation. So if this is something you think you're going to do, don't put it into an account that's 59.5 centric,
Which just goes to show you that none of the stuff that we talk about is actually cookie cutter. We have our systems and we have our rules of thumb in place. But yeah, that's really interesting. The way you would tackle saving and investing with folks like this would be entirely different.
Yeah, and I think, even like the traditional mortgage conversation, being in one location, all of that is, real questionable. I read an article on the sabbatical one that, man, I'm just a sappy guy anymore. And it was about a 20-something that want to live with their grandparents for 5 years when they were at the end of their lives.
So as a caretaker?
As a caretaker. That was a stunning, highly, desirable, classy thing to do.
Yeah.
And they'll never regret it.
Exactly. You don't see getting to the end of your life and regretting those moments.
Yeah. So very interesting. So I like this one more than the FIRE movement because I just feel like it has built-in purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next,
and like anything, I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but like anything, and this rings out to me because I can be insanely focused for short bursts. Yeah, and that's what this is, right? You're really, really focused on something for a short amount of time, and then you shift your focus completely, entirely to something else, and then you keep going back.
Right.
You're
you go back to what your expertise is if you didn't discover something new in your sabbatical time. Yeah.
It seems sustainable because there's always an end in sight. I think for people punching a time clock and going, well, in 35 years, I'll do the things that I want to do. That's depressing.
That's hard. And that's why I think these alternatives have popped up.
All right. I'm sorry. So go on.
The next one's great. And it kind of fits into that too, which is this encore career thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is simply, I did the 9 to 5. Okay. I punched the clock, like you just said. I did it for 20 years. I'm 50 years old. I'm done. Okay. I'm going to quit that job and do something different.
Yeah.
And now when I mean something different, this isn't like, I was an eye doctor and I'm going to go be an eye doctor somewhere else.
Yeah.
This is like I owned a business and now I'm going to go work at the golf course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something that you have an interest in typically.
Yep.
One that I heard just recently was going to help my son start a business.
Yeah.
I was like, that's real fascinating. Again,
really good use of your expertise and resources.
Yeah. Talk about wisdom, especially if you have a good relationship. So, this encore career idea would be at some time before your actual retirement, typical retirement date, maybe 15, 20 years before the typical retirement.
Yeah, when I hear that, I think
different.
Like age 50 and beyond, maybe. Yeah. And I think when I hear this, I think, okay, encore career is not necessarily about earning.
No. So here, I like the mentality here is like reducing the cost down to almost nothing. So we're typically out of debt. We have decided that we don't need the McMansion and the McFerrari and all of that stuff. We are going to live in 1,200 square feet condo or 1,200 square foot house.
Oh, that sounds nice. I could use the extra 100 square feet.
Not everyone picks that option as, from the gate, like you guys. But
wait, am I encore retired?
Yeah. You're like, this is a bad dream. No. So these folks are at the point where they're like, I'm going to give up maybe some of the reaching for what is perceived as success and go work at the bakery. I love it. So I love it. That's real rewirement to me. Okay.
I like it.
Yeah. And so the last one I just want to mention is generating alternative income sources. And this is like a passive income source, farmland, real estate. If you build that up over 30 years in conjunction with your retirement savings, you might just show up at age 50 and be like, I got more income on that side of the fence than I do in my paycheck.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah. And so that one I don't want to dismiss. And, this might be like self-serve car washes, laundromats, things like that are just kind of bread and butter income sources. My
brother-in-law always says the things that are still making money while you're sleeping.
Yeah. Those passive income sources that are going to just help support you when you're at that point where you're like, I want to do something different. So,
and those might be some of the outlets that you use instead of a typical retirement account or something like that. If you are looking at retiring creatively,
sure,
you might put more money into rentals rather than 401k or an IRA or something like that.
Absolutely. So
that's okay.
Yeah, and I mean, again, if you are handy or have a passion for fixing things up, this might be a great thought. So
yeah.
I do want to mention before we kind of wrap this thing up, there are a couple roadblocks we need to make sure we get through. Do not forget about health insurance. Okay.
That is honestly one of the biggest hurdles for a lot of people. That's in the way I keep pointing.
Which ticks me off so much that this is one of the things that we have to get over. Work with somebody that can help you through that. I mean, that's what we do every day.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do this if you haven't considered what your debt situation is.
Big one.
We don't want you to be a slave to the lender while you're deciding to do an alternative rewirement strategy.
Yeah, you also don't want to forego that fulfilling encore retirement or that encore career because you've got
with daily panic attacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can do that, and I think we've talked about this before on the podcast that you get to the point where you don't owe anybody anything, and in your mind you can take that step and do the thing that you love, not the thing that you need to do, and find out because you're doing what you love, you make more money than you ever did.
Absolutely. And it doesn't need to be at age 65. It can be at age 45.
I mean, it's a novel concept that you might be more successful at something that you love.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you get the debt out of the way, what a concept there. I mean, you're going to be able to take that leap. And, I don't know. This is exciting to me.
It is.
There's hope out there for you guys. I mean, you just got to make a good plan and, get focused.
You don't have to be normal.
No.
Normal's not always.
Look at us.
Yeah.
You could be like us one day.
Hey, kids. One day you play your cards right, you might be like old Jason and Caleb.
Live in a van down by the river.
All right. This was a fun one, Jason. I liked it. Thanks for having a drink with us this week, folks. It is time to close out the tab. If you have a question or a topic you want addressed on the Old Fashioned Finance Podcast, be sure to email us at podcast@bluejfg.com. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to share the show with someone you love or just someone who needs a little money muddling themselves. You can stay up to date with the latest action by following us on Facebook. Old Fashioned Finance is brought to you by Blue Jay Financial Group. That's bluejfg.com and produced by Podastery Studios. We've been your hosts, Caleb and Jason. Cheers.
I just slammed that thing.
I saw. Easy,
I've been
killer.
warning.
All right. Hats off, Wisconsin. Blue Jay Financial Group, LLC. Blue Jay is a registered investment advisor registered with the state of Ohio. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The presence of this advertisement on this podcast shall not be directly or indirectly interpreted as a solicitation of investment advisory services to persons of another jurisdiction unless otherwise permitted by statute. Follow-up or individualized responses to a consumer in a particular state by Blue Jay and the rendering of personalized investment advice for compensation shall not be made without first complying with jurisdiction requirements or pursuant an applicable state exemption. All verbal and written consent on this presentation is for information purposes only. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Blue Jay unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by our firm as to other parties' informational accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with an advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation.